This is episode 376 of Jumblethink.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Jumblethink, where we interview dreamers, makers, innovators, and influencers all about their journey of turning dreams and ideas into reality. Along the way, we're going to share some tips on how you can turn your own dreams and ideas into reality too. On the show today, our guest is Nick Tarascio. More about Nick in a moment. Whether you're a new listener or a longtime fan, if you've never subscribed to Jumblethink, now's the time to do it. Head on over to wherever you listen to podcasts, search for Jumblethink, and click subscribe. To make it even easier, if you head on over to jumblethink.com, you'll find links to places like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, and more. So never miss an episode of Jumblethink or another great conversation. Head over and subscribe now. Let's join today's conversation. Hey there, friends. It's Mike Woodward. I am your host, and we have a great conversation lined up for you today. Before we dive into that, I want to let you know we're giving away some stuff. We recently had Lecrae on the show. He has a new book out. We're going to give a copy of his book away, and we have some exciting authors talking about a wide range of topics coming up on the show. I don't want you to miss out. I want you to get the opportunity to win one of these books or some of the other giveaways that we are doing. Best of all, it's completely free. All you have to do is head on over to jumblethink.com, sign up for our newsletter. When you do that, you'll also get the free Dreamer's Guide to Micro Experiments, which will help you rapidly turn those dreams and ideas into reality. And you'll be entered to win a bunch of really cool giveaways we're going to be doing in the weeks to come. I don't want you to miss it. I want you to get free stuff. So go do that, jumblethink.com, and sign up for that newsletter. We've got a really fun conversation lined up for you today. Now, if you're like everyone else in the world, you're starting to wonder, is it safe to travel? And when it is, how do I do it? Or if you're a business exec, you may be wondering, how do I travel when my job requires me to do it? It's a real question. It's legitimate in a COVID and post-COVID world. And our guest today is going to answer some of those questions and give you some unique points of view that you may have never even thought as possible for your own life and for your business. So we're going to be looking at how we fly, how we travel, how we get where we're going. We're going to be looking at how we navigate vacations and business travel in this world. We're going to be talking to Nick Tarascio. He's the CEO of New York-based Ventura Air Services, and he's a licensed jet pilot. There are a lot of people looking at alternatives to traveling, and one overlooked but often much more affordable than we think method is private air travel. Nick has been in the world of avionics and aviation for years. He is a second-generation business owner in the world of aviation. And not only are we going to be talking about COVID and travel, we're going to be talking about pilot mindset and what that means. We're going to be talking about how you can leverage private flight for your business to actually lower your expenses. And we're going to be talking about one of my favorite things, really cool planes. I mean, who doesn't like a jet-filled life? I've never experienced like private flight, but I'm excited to explore the possibilities with Nick. So let's go ahead and join the conversation with our guest, Nick Tarascio. We are here with Nick Tarascio. Nick, thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Happy to be here.
You are the guy behind Ventura Aircraft Services. You're second generation in this business, right?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. So how did you transition into this? Was this always something you were passionate about that you picked up from your family? Was it something that it was a necessity and somebody needed to come in and take over the family business? How did you get into this role of running the air services and all that you're doing in Ventura?
So a little bit of it was my first foray into it that I didn't know any different. So I grew up flying in the back of little airplanes, and I thought everyone drove their car to their little plane and the way some people drive their cars to their boats. So I just assumed everyone had planes.
Okay.
So I think growing up in that lifestyle, it just was something that I was really accustomed to. But around 19, I was in college at the time going for computer engineering. And my family just really needed help. They were in the middle of a big project. They were building their first building, and stuff was just getting really hard, and I could see the overwhelm from my parents.
Yeah.
And I decided in that moment I'd drop out of college and try to help out with the business, and organically ended up the CEO of the company. Just I got invited to an event and no one else in my family wanted to go and represent as the CEO. So they said, you be the CEO. And I went and I said, I guess I'm the CEO now. I don't even know what that means. And it's stuck. And I found that where my parents are really more doers, they love being hands-on. They're in it because they love aviation. I'm in it because I do like the business piece. I like enabling others. I like building management roles and allowing people to execute on their vision.
Yeah. So you kind of end up doing this, but you actually seem to have found something that not beyond the jets, you actually really enjoy the business of it. It sounds like.
Yeah. I mean, aviation in general is the Olympics of business. I mean, if you've ever heard stories of like the worst industry to be in, if you're trying to make money, the jokes are, if you want to make $1 million in aviation, start with 5.
Yeah.
So, going into it and realizing this is a hard business. You really need to be on your game. You need to understand best practices and all the principles that people use to, how do you make an effective leadership team? How do you figure out how to financially control an airline? So at first, what I found to be really challenging really became enjoyment. There's a little part of me that's like, it's like climbing Everest every day.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's break down what the different services you are. You have charters, you have repair and maintenance, you have leasing, you have sales. So talk to us about the stack of services that you're offering and how you serve your clients.
Yeah. So it's interesting because if you looked at the way the world used to be, right, everything was like horizontally integrated. You had these big corporations that did every piece of it. And then everyone, went into this niche tech world where you're like, I do one thing for a lot of people. So we kind of went the other way and said, aviation, I think it commands having control of all parts of the process. So we do go out, we source the airplanes for someone. So if you came to me and said, Nick, I want to own an airplane, I'd say, let's figure out what you want to own and why. Let's come up with the appropriate plane for your mission. Then we'll go out and buy it. We'll refurb it for you. We'll put new avionics. We'll put a stereo system in it. We'll do fancy paint jobs. I'm sure you'd want to have something like a rainbow across the tail or like unicorns. And no, we've had people that have come up with like all these crazy paint schemes and stuff. But we've get people ask for customizations of their plane, and ultimately, then what we do is we put it into service for a lot of people. So we'll say, look, if you're not going to use it most of the time, which most people don't, people have a jet so they can fly a couple times a year.
Yeah.
Then we can monetize it when you're not using it. So we charter it out for you. We again keep it up, keep it maintained, and then if at some point you say I want to trade up to something else, we'll sell your plane and buy you another airplane. So it's the entire life cycle of the relationship that we control.
Well, I want to step back here. We're talking about purchasing planes here. Let's quantify what that is, because a lot of your fleet is in the jet world, but do you also sell single prop? Do you sell turbojets, turbofans? What is that called?
Like a turboprop, like a
turboprop. Yeah. What kind of planes are you selling?
So we'll sell anything. At the end of the day, we have a maintenance shop that can oversee the pre-purchase inspection on any kind of airplane.
Okay.
And again, if it's a specialty plane, we might still guide the process to another shop. But really, at the end of the day, if you come to me and tell me your mission, I can tell you what plane's right for you, and we'll go and find that plane for you. So it doesn't matter what it is. Now, I'm not going to monetize a little prop plane for you. At the end of the day, we used to do that with our flight school, but we got out of the flight school business.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we can help with any type of airplane you're looking for. That's not the issue. And again, in the case of jets, we can offer a very attractive financial return by chartering the airplane when you're not using it, and also giving you some tax incentives as well. So the crazy thing about this business is if you bought an airplane for business use, you can write it off 100% in the year you bought it. So someone will say, look, I'll put 20% down on the airplane, but I'm going to get a 40% tax break in tax savings that year.
Okay.
So there's this interesting cash play that we do. So we say we're more of a financial company that operates airplanes than an airplane company that helps you with your finances.
Well, I think that's where business people think differently than your typical employee, your typical worker, in that a business person is going to come in and look at assets. What can accrue as an asset for me instead of, investment people are like that too, in real estate and other instruments. It's interesting to think of these planes not as, hey, I own this thing, but as this is creating revenue. This is creating returns for me. So walk us through the ideal kind of customer who would be coming in and thinking about that. Or what's their net worth like? What is their long-term objectives with this? How are they seeing? What kind of returns are they seeing?
Yeah. So first and foremost, I had written a book a bunch of years back called Own Your Own Plane. It costs less than you think. And the reason I did that was all my entrepreneur friends were like, when I get that Oprah money, I could buy a jet.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need Oprah money. You could actually own your own plane, a small plane, for all to the tune of about $20,000 a year, you could have your own plane and put some real hours on it. So
well, what's that mean? A real plane at $20,000 a year? Can you?
So
quantify?
It's a little like a single engine prop plane. You could have your own single engine prop plane again, and with that plane you could fly. I'm in New York, so you could fly up to Maine. You could fly down to the Mid Atlantic easily. Fly out to the islands like Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard. So we find that people go, wait a minute, that's all I'll ever need. I need to fly me and 2 family members. I'll hire a pilot for the day. They could fly me around in my little plane.
Yeah.
Then in the book I talk about the different escalations. When do you need a turboprop like a King Air? When do you need a light jet, an Eclipse or something to that effect?
Yeah.
When do you need to start getting into like a big heavy jet? So all the different levels, it's surprising for people to find out that you can buy used equipment for 1/10 of what it costs new. So when we see people going out and saying, I'm going to buy a mid-sized jet, 7 seats, like our Citation Excels is the planes we just started adding to our fleet.
Yeah.
That plane brand new was $13 million. You could buy them now for $1.5 million.
Okay.
So again, that sounds like a lot, but when you go, if I'm running a business that's even doing $15-20 million of revenue, I might be able to justify putting 20% down, have my own jet. If I need to move between multiple factory locations or move my teams around, people start to see the economics and they go, this isn't that crazy. So the way we look at it is you go and you buy a jet. We help you through the process. We generally have seen people who get about a 7.5 to a 15% return on that airplane year over year for what they spent on it. So, and then they're paying about half of what a charter rate would be when they use it themselves. So it adds up. And then you add to that the fact that you're getting 40% that you would have, 40% back on your taxes on your, if you made a profit that year, you're going to save all that tax money by reducing your tax basis. And you start to go, wow, these economics start to add up. I've got money I can play with that I would have spent on taxes otherwise. I've got a tool that I can use for my lifestyle or for my business. And again, I've gotten a nice little return and a savings when I do use it. So the picture is really quite extraordinary. It's just for a lot of people, it feels too good to be true, because so many people in the industry don't integrate. So it's like you just buy a plane from one person and someone else fixes it and then someone else manages it. And no one's integrated the whole offering to make it work for your specific circumstance. That's the reason we really horizontally integrated all these pieces of our company.
When I hear you talk about chartered flights, I kind of feel like this is almost like the Uber and Lyft of aviation. You have somebody that owns a car, you have somebody that drives that car, you have somebody that will pick you up and deliver you where you want to go. And instead of it being a car, you're moving into a jet or some other kind of plane to be the mechanism. And it's just a larger scale, a higher echelon of price, but you're doing the exact same thing with chartered flights. Is that a good analogy?
Yeah, so it's exactly that. It's that there is a small percent of the population that would fully benefit from ownership. They're in the right tax bracket. They have the right kind of income coming in that we can offset. They fly 50 to 75, maybe 100 hours a year. They're in the right geographic locations. And then they're saying, hey, look, if I could find a way to reduce my cost, I was going to fly anyway. This is wonderful. But then there's other people that go, I need to fly 2-3 trips a year. Great. Never buy an airplane if you're going to fly 2 to 3 trips a year.
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense. But hey, we've got all these people that own that want to offset their costs. We'll marry those two together and allow a really effective and efficient experience.
Now, is this something that somebody could actually grow a business out of, partnering with someone like you, saying, hey, we've got our first plane, we're using this as an asset, we'd like to grow our own little mini fleet, and then you guys manage it and take care of it, you do maintenance, you do booking and everything like that. Is that something that's happened? Is that something that's even feasible for somebody?
We've had a couple of people give us multiple airplanes.
Okay.
So for whatever reason, they felt that they needed to have multiple airplanes, and we managed all that for them. So, I mean, generally speaking, it's rare that that someone would say, I want to build my own fleet and have it fueled by your company. But we have seen that happen. There are a couple of companies now that do that, where they say, we don't want to be an airline, we're a broker. We're going to go and sell inventory, but we're going to white label what you do. We're going to brand ourselves on your tail of your airplane, and we're going to act like it's you. But it's like Delta Connection, for example.
Yeah.
You've got these other companies that are operating as a Delta subsidiary or a Delta affiliate. And we've seen that as well. So a lot of times, for example, we sell a lot through brokers. We also do that, where it's fine. No one needs to know what our name is. Our whole business has been whoever needs us, direct end users, brokers. We generally are a wholesaler.
Okay.
Our business is really more about efficiency. And I never wanted to build big sales teams. Managing someone's relationship for a year to have them do one Christmas flight, that's not something I really want to do with our business. It's an expensive thing to do. So we say, look, let the brokers do that, and we'll provide that. We don't try to poach from anybody. And again, so in many ways, we fuel other people's businesses.
That's really cool. Now let's talk about your fleet. You have 2 Bombardier Challenger 604s, Citation Excel, 3 of the Learjet 55s. Under the light jets, you have 2 Learjet 35As. Are those all owned planes, or are those ones that are partnerships with your customers too?
So we've got some are owned, some are half owned, some are leased by, like we do a lease arrangement with a customer. So it's about, I'd say more than half are owned by our customers.
Okay.
Generally speaking. And again, depending on the relationship, sometimes we've even partnered with customers where we say, well, we'll own it 50%, you own it 50%. So we could do all kinds of different variations. And then we just are taking delivery of 2 additional Citation Excels over the next couple of weeks. Those are coming out of the factory after doing an inspection. So we're really seeing a lot of growth. There's a lot of interest in what we're doing.
When I was reading a little bit about your process in the world of COVID, let's kind of pivot here and go in that direction. What I found that was interesting is the first couple of months you guys saw a big dip, but then June, July, you guys saw the numbers just exponentially over the year before. So talk to us a little bit about the change of philosophy on travel and how COVID's impacted that.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that I saw shift was that we used to be in a luxury industry. Charter was considered luxury, and people would, they'd go, "Why would I ever fly private? That's what luxury is, right?" And after 2008, all the negativity, Obama spoke out against private jets when I think it was the GM guys took a private jet to Washington to talk about bailouts. So, for 12 years, it was all this negativity around it's not cool to be in a private jet anymore. It's excess.
Yeah.
Suddenly, COVID happens. And then they're going, wait, this is safety. People are buying safety. And so our value proposition really changed for people, and people can justify spending more on safety, right? And they're willing to say, look, I don't want to I want to go see my family. Mm-hmm. I don't want to bring an illness with me. I don't want to make someone sick and be responsible for potentially knowing that they got sick and died from it, right? So we saw people that said, look, I would never have justified charter before, but it was the largest on-ramp to charter from people that had never used it before that we've ever seen in the industry. A lot of first-time users.
Private jets seem like there's an efficiency there over a commercial jet, where if you're completely using that jet, filling it up with everyone that you're taking along, you're going from point A to point B, that it might actually be more efficient than taking a private jet. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, so let's go back to that particular circumstance with the automotive executives.
Yeah.
I don't remember the number, but I think it was something like hundreds of millions of dollars are being lost per day. Mm-hmm. It was something really uncomfortable, right? Yeah. And they needed the bailout. So when you look at that and you say, okay, hundreds of millions of dollars could have been lost just in the time it would have taken them to transfer flights or whatever they had to do, getting them there as fast as possible to do what they needed to do from a purely economics perspective was a net benefit. Yeah. But it's so foreign for people to understand that what is an executive's time really worth when they're running a Fortune 500 corporation? Yeah. Right. It's so hard to process that. So as an example, even for an average employee, what we say is if you had 7 executives and you needed to fly them to 1 or 2 locations, you're going to potentially have to fly out the night before and you're going to fly back the morning after the meeting. So you're really taking out 3 days are impacted, where you could do that in 1 day on a private jet. That means people get to sleep at home. You don't have to pay for hotels. You don't need to pay 3 days of work. You're not exhausting the team. There's so much stuff when you look at that and you go, if I have a team of 7 high-level people on that airplane, 100% it makes sense just to say, let's burn 1 day instead of 3.
Yeah. It's an economics play.
Exactly. And it's hard for people to look at, but there was a really cool YouTube video where I think someone did an analysis of the Walmart jet fleet, which I think is 17 airplanes.
Oh, wow.
They have a huge amount of airplanes. Yeah. And again, it's they're looking why would they allow people to do this? Because they get to fly out and hit up multiple locations in 1 day and have their team back. And the economics do add up when you really look closely at it. It starts to make a lot of sense.
And I think that there are bad things about big business that are fair arguments. But when we look at executive compensation and people are like, why are you paying an executive this much? Why are they getting all these perks and benefits? And you look at what they manage and the amount of expectation that's on them. Let's talk about somebody running Disney, Bob Iger, who's not running it anymore. You look at him and you look at the amount of trillions of dollars that pass through Disney in a short period of time. And he's responsible for that. At the end of the day, the success and failure is dictated by his decisions and the board's decisions. And so being more efficient and allowing him the freedom to make rapid decisions and get from point A to point B and do those, there's huge wins for that. There's huge benefits to being able to give him the freedom to operate at a level where he may have to be in Orlando and then New York and then LA and back and forth to Asia or Paris to manage one of their parks or something. So we're looking at a very big scale when we're talking like that. But how does this trickle down to a mid-cap business? How does this become more efficient for them where they look at the economics just like those big corporations do? When they look at it, how does that become a win for them too?
So there's a few things, and it's really interesting to think about it on that level too, which is if you're a mid-market company, let's say you're a 20, 30, $40 million business, it's some stiff competition out there.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the ways to get leverage is time leverage, right? It's if you can move faster than your competition, you can actually get incredible leverage.
Yeah.
And I, if you're familiar with, in the stock market, I forgot the exact metric, but there was something where they created a fiber optic connection between Chicago and New York.
Mm-hmm.
And the milliseconds saved allowed some people to get an edge on trading faster.
Yeah.
And so I think it's the same thing. Seconds can matter in business. Hours definitely matter in business. So I think there's that leverage alone. And also there was a guy who was a negotiator. He said he would always negotiate late at night because he knew that the other people would be tired and they would give. Right. So there's something to be said for that. So when I look at it, I go, to protect someone's health, being rested, being able to go to more places, being able to see with their own eyes, there's so many benefits that come from being able to be more connected to the world around you and to be more present in that process. Then, if you look at it like how much are they spending to do that? I'll give you an example. We had someone that bought a mid-sized jet with us, the Learjet 55.
Okay.
It was all of about, I think, $410,000 to buy the airplane total.
What?
And you're going, wait a minute, 410. Most businesses that are above $10 million can justify a $400,000 airplane.
Yeah.
And it's a Learjet. It holds 7 people. It'll go to Aruba nonstop. It'll go almost all the way across the country, one fuel stop if you need to go to California. You start to look at that and go, wait a minute. So really this person's not spending that much money.
Yeah.
And then to operate, it's about $2,000 an hour.
Wow.
So you're going, okay, let's say they go to Florida and back, $8,000. If they had 7 people on that airplane, you're not talking about a lot of money per person.
No, that could easily add up on business class or first class flights to be that. So you talk about that $2,000 per hour. Is that including fuel, the rental,
everything,
the pilots?
Everything.
Okay.
All variable costs were included in that number. And that does not include the offset of the charter revenue.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, the person has to buy the airplane. They got it, whatever they want to do. They either pay outright with cash. They get a note on the airplane, take a loan. They have to pay $2,000 an hour when they use it, but then they're getting revenue coming in from the charter to offset that. So there are some people that say, I may fly free for 10 hours a year. I still have to pay for the asset itself, but my personal flying time or my business flying time is offset by the charter it does. So now you're going, you just had to hold a $410,000 note on the airplane.
Yeah.
That's not that crazy.
In a mid-cap business, they should be able to pay that off very rapidly if they are managing their company correctly.
Yeah. And again, if you talk about, some of the deals that we've seen going on right now, acquisitions, mergers, these are big play deals that involve millions of dollars of opportunity.
Yeah.
A $400,000 airplane seems like a pretty small investment to make that a possibility.
So are you seeing a growth in mid-cap businesses now in this space, or is it still something that there's an awareness gap where people are going, well, I'm a mid-cap business. This is just unreachable for me. This is unattainable. That's just, well, if I'm getting a Learjet, that must be $14 million. There's these weird perceptions on the actual cost of it. And you even mentioned there at the beginning, here you have a jet that originally sold for $16 million. Now it's selling for 1.4 used. So there's some misunderstandings about that. Do you still see a knowledge gap there?
100%. I mean, this is the thing, because it's been a luxury industry for so long. And look at rap video culture, right? Mm-hmm. I want to show you that I've got wealth. So I put a jet behind me in the video.
Yeah.
It's, hey, that's $50 million. That's this, right? Like everyone's showing off. In reality, we've rented our airplanes to those videos and they want to represent it like they own it. It's their, it's their like $50 million jet. That was $1 million jet. It was a $500,000 jet, right? It's like anybody could do that. If you want to rent one, you could absolutely go put one behind you in your video if you want. So I think culturally we made it almost seem like it was such a mark of extreme wealth when it's not true. And that's why I wrote the book I wrote, because I said, hey, I got to grow up flying in airplanes, and I do not take that for granted. I recognize I had a very unique upbringing. However, I felt it was my imperative to share with other people that it doesn't have to be this impossible thing. There's a way for you and everyone to experience aviation on some level if we break that the whole barrier, like you talked about, that this crazy knowledge gap of like, well, I can never afford it. Maybe once I get $50 million, I'm going, no, that's not the truth. So yes, it's a big challenge. And there's another piece of it. And again, it's unfortunately any industry that attracts wealthy people has sharks in it.
Yeah.
And that's the unfortunate reality, is that there's a lot of people that take advantage of first timers that come into the space, which is why we said, look, I may not be as good of a marketer. I may not be as good of a salesperson as some of those people, but I'm going to do my part to educate as much as I can and say, if this is something you truly want to consider, have a conversation. We can help you figure out what's possible, at least create the roadmap so you know what point would you need to get to have that dream life that you want, using airplanes in whatever way you want to. And it's often been lower than people ever expected.
So you mentioned earlier on that some people will come in and they'll start small and they'll scale over a period of time.
That's right.
Walk us through that process of understanding your desire versus your needs, your growth potential with this, and how you could walk through the process of growing with this strategy.
Yeah. So to start with, aviation is an intimidating thing to do for two reasons. We all know someone who lost money at it. Like once you're in the world of aviation, there are a lot of people that are embarrassed to say, I lost a lot of money on a jet because they did the wrong thing. They didn't talk to us clearly. The second thing is there's so much, generally people that are in business know where to spend their time. They know what pools to fish in, right? Because they go, I know my business. I don't invest in things I don't understand. And so aviation is very complex. That's a beautiful jet. What year is it? I have no idea. Is it old? Has it been fixed up? Is it going to break? Is it safe? There's all these things that people need to know. So if someone really wanted to learn it themselves, go out, buy a little prop plane. There are plenty of nice ones, even like a Cirrus. It's a little bit bigger of an investment. You're probably closer to like $100,000, $150,000, $200,000. But you could buy a used Cirrus. That's the one with the parachute. It's the plastic airplane. Generally speaking, you could get one of those. You can hire a pilot, which is go find a local flight school and say, hey, I'll pay you a day rate for $150 or $200 a day. You can get a pilot to fly you around with your, you got 3 seats available to you. It's probably $100 an hour to operate the airplane. And this is great for people that want to fly like a region, even a regional business. People that are saying, hey, I'm on, I'm in New York, but I sell in Boston, I sell in DC, I sell in Philly. Those planes are phenomenal for being able to really take a region and collapse it into a small space for you. Yeah. And then someone would say, okay, I did that for a while. Now I think I want to go to a light jet or I want to go to turboprop. Yeah. Some people top out there and say, look, I'd never need more than this based on what I do. And then we have people that enter at the light jet world, and then very few people transition past a mid-jet. This is like, again, 7 seats. You start to almost get to a stand-up height. Very few people ever justify a heavy jet like our Challengers or a Gulfstream or these bigger jets. But the reality is, because a mid-jet, yes, it's not made to go to California nonstop, but it's one fuel stop. So for some people, they just go, you know what, it's good enough. 7 seats, I'm happy. Most of the flying on our side of the world is New York to South Florida, New York to the Caribbean. Most mid-jets can handle that. So, but I think it's more of, once people dip their toe and see what it's like, they're like, okay, I had no idea I wanted to do this as much as I do. And I had no idea how good it feels to not have to go through a long security line, not have to put people at risk, not have to, like, I could change my schedule last minute. I could take 2 extra hours if I'm having an important meeting or if I'm with family that I don't want to leave yet. I could plan a vacation somewhere and then the weather's bad there, so I'll just go somewhere else the day of. There's a lot of things people never took into consideration and go, but this is why I work hard, so I could have this kind of lifestyle.
There are some people who may be listening going, this sounds really cool. Maybe I want to get a little single prop plane, or maybe I want to upgrade to a jet down the road. What are the costs that I might not be aware of that I have to take into consideration with that investment?
Yeah. So first of all, any good broker or buyer's agent would move them through a whole model. Like we do that. We give a whole model that shows all the ups and downs, all the potential variables. But if you're talking about the actual acquisition process, the couple of things you need to do are have a pre-purchase inspection on the plane you find. So you're probably going to pay your buyer's agent, depending on the plane. It could be from $2,500 to $100,000, depending on if you're getting like a big Gulfstream or you're getting a little prop plane. And then maybe some cost to move the airplane to a maintenance shop. Depending on the way you work the deal out, probably an aviation attorney to help structure some of the buyer's agreements. I mean, it really is quite variable. It's such a big range. I mean, we've bought airplanes for under $10,000 and we bought airplanes for over $250,000 as far as all the fees associated with it. Depending on what it is. And then again, like you could buy planes that need refurbishment. So it's like a house. You're saying, I'm going to buy this plane. It needs everything: interior, avionics, paint, engine, cool, but I'm going to make it exactly what I want. It's going to be like brand new. We do a lot of that. We'll take planes that are, we buy some planes for like $14,000 and then they're worth 120 by the time we're done.
Wow.
And, it just depends on what that is. So it's a tough question, but what I'd say is for someone trying to learn it, they would probably need a long format conversation with someone like us, like call our company and we'll talk you through what those specific things are, because your mission does dictate that. And going to like, should someone become a pilot? I heard a little bit of that in the question.
Yeah.
My answer to that is don't do it because it's practical. It's just, I think it's too hard. I think it's too hard and requires too much care and commitment to perfection of a craft to truly be safe at it. And do it because you love it, and do it because it's meaningful. Do it because it's something that you find great joy in learning and getting to experience. If you just want practical, just hire a pilot. They're not that expensive.
Yeah.
Like in the grand scheme of things, they're not that expensive, and you're going to get professionalism and safety. And there's plenty of pilots looking to build time and to grow in their career too. So give someone an opportunity who is in love with what they do, and you sit in the back and enjoy your life.
Yeah, I love that. I want to pivot here. You have something that you call it the pilot mindset. And, we're ending that last conversation there about pilots and getting your license. What is the pilot mindset, and what can we as business leaders learn from that mindset? Yeah.
So consequently, this was something that came from the fact that I had an engine failure in a single engine airplane. It was no big deal. I did everything I was trained to do. I don't remember really any emotional reaction to it at all. It was more like, this happened. Now I need to do what I've been trained to do. And I looked at the maps, and at the time I looked at my GPS and said, okay, there's a military base that I think I'll make it to. Mm-hmm. So I just started gliding to the military base, called the emergency, and landed uneventfully. And at the same time, I was also in a pretty challenged relationship in my personal life, where I was constantly getting emotional and arguing with reality and going, why is this happening to me? And so I had this moment of like, why am I a different person in a pilot seat than I am in other parts of my life? Okay. And then when Sully had the Miracle on the Hudson, I went, wow, like there's something to this, that I know many people that are really successful pilots, but then struggle in it being irrational in other parts of life. And I said, well, what if I apply the principles of the cockpit to everything else in my life? How I run my business, how I build relationships and all that stuff. And it like some clear things came out of it. So I came out with kind of 5 steps that essentially guide me in most of my process for life now, which is start with a clear vision. I would never take off without knowing where I'm going. Yeah. Under any circumstance, even if it means I'm going up for an hour and landing back at the same place, I know generally where I want to go. So I was like, wow, it's interesting how many times in business I didn't have a vision and I wasn't super clear, but I was just kind of running the paces. I was like, this is silly. I should sit and think. And then from there, once I had a clear vision, I said, okay, it's really important to understand your capability and your airplane's capability. So I'm getting in a jet, or am I getting in a prop plane? One's going to go to 40,000 feet. One's going to go to 4,000 feet. These things matter. And so it's that self-assessment and that pre-flight of my equipment, my personal equipment, like what am I competent to do? And if someone asked me to do a mission in an airplane that I couldn't do, I'd not do it. Why do I do that in my life now? Why do I commit to things that I can't follow through on because I don't have the experience? That said, if I want to fly a jet and I'm not a jet pilot, I go get trained to fly a jet. Yeah. I want to run a bigger business and I don't currently run a big business. I should go get trained on how to do it. Find the resources, find mentors, run through the process, run through a simulator, right? Run all the same stuff I learned in an airplane. And I said, okay, cool. Now that I know where I want to go and what I'm capable of, now I need to draw a line to get there. And you may have seen that success line. People think it's like this linear uphill line. In reality, it's like that crazy all over the place line. Airplanes and pilots are, hey, I'm going around mountains and weather. I'm going to make a realistic plan around the hazards that could prevent me. Yeah. So that's number 3 is flight plan with a practical sense to get around your hazards. Number 4, is really define and monitor those critical instruments. So what are your critical numbers? For some people, it's cash. For some people, it's quality of life, for how much love they have in their life, what their weight is, whatever those things are. On a dashboard of a plane, we have 6 instruments. It's called a 6-pack. You basically say, when everything else fails, stare at those things. If you can control those key metrics, you're going to be okay. But if you start getting confused and looking everywhere and dealing with crying babies in the back and doing all this stuff, you're going to miss your important stuff. So I would say, define what really matters to you in your life and then monitor those things. And the last thing I say is make small corrections. Because if you're slightly off course, you could be lazy and say, it's fine, I'm only 10% off. Or you can make a tiny adjustment now and you won't have to deal with it later. Yeah. A lot of times in flying, the one thing you don't want to do is let yourself go way off course. And by the time you realize it's too late, who knows? Who knows what happens? And I think in my life, I really looked at it that way and said, now I did this like a whole big program that I built at one point that I go over with people. But it's really kind of the high level was when you become a pilot, this is something that a lot of pilots have told me, you learn a different way of seeing the world. Mm-hmm. And that translates into everything else you do in your life, whether or not you want it to. You just see the world differently. And I wanted to say, like, not everyone needs to be a pilot to learn these great principles and practices. And I don't know anything more aspirational than flight. When you look up and you see an airplane flying, we've only been doing that for 120 years, basically, right? It's like 118 that we've really had flight in airplanes. What an aspirational, inspirational act that we've done as humans. And so I thought that overlaying the mindset with something so aspirational was a really great way to give people, what do you say? Give them their vegetables, but make it taste like candy.
That's great. I love that. And it's an interesting thing. I'm obviously not a pilot. I think of the world through my perspectives, and to have kind of that pilot's philosophy or mindset, there's a lot we can learn from that. And I think that's really a powerful tool. Up above your left shoulder is a really cool picture. It looks like a space suit. Do you have a dream of getting to space, maybe on a SpaceX or Virgin Galactica or something like that?
I mean, I think it'd be fun to try. I do think when I hear astronauts talk about the little blue marble, and that, they basically realized they were one of 3 people at the time looking back at all of humanity that ever lived in one fell swoop. I think that would be a really great experience to try. I definitely am happy with letting other people figure out how that all works for a while so that, all the stats are in my favor and the safety's in my favor. Strangely enough, I'm not one of those guys that would sign up for the mission to Mars and go, it's fine if I never come back.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't do that. I'd love to go to space, but I don't want to stay somewhere else. I want to get back home. So
absolutely.
Before we wrap up this segment, how can people find and connect with you?
So the biggest stuff is they can either check out our website, venturajet.com. And again, there's a bunch of ways to reach out on there. You can find me on LinkedIn. It's just Nick Tarascio. You could search me on there. And then if you're more interested in my personal random escapades involving music and snowboarding and whatever random stuff I'm up to, you can find me on Instagram, which is Nick Tarascio without the C in my first name.
Nice. We'll put those links in the episode notes. They're going to be super fun and easy for you to check out. Definitely go check them out. Check out Ventura Aircraft Services and all that they're doing and how they can serve you. We're going to take a break here. When we come back, it's rapid fire questions. We're so glad that you are joining for today's conversation here at Jumblethink. I want to ask you a quick favor. If you have a story on how Jumblethink has impacted your thought on life, dreams, ideas, or challenged a preconception in your own life, I would love to hear your story. All you have to do is head on over to jumblethink.com and you can drop us a note through the contact form, or you can even email me directly, mike@jumblethink.com. I would love to hear how Jumblethink has helped you in the journey of chasing dreams and ideas. Now let's jump back into today's conversation.
Levez seulement le bras pour mettre l'aiguille sur le disque. Mettez le contact, reposez votre bras et attendez.
We are back with Nick. Nick, are you ready for rapid fire questions?
Absolutely. I've studied for this moment.
As a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be in a rock band.
Nice. And you still play music, right?
I do.
What do you play?
Guitar, drums, bass, piano, and I sing.
Nice. What is one tip you give someone with a big idea or dream and they don't know where to start?
Figure out the why first. I think get really clear on the why and then tell everyone why you want to do it, because that captures people's hearts and they'll help you do it.
What's one change you would like to see in the world?
More courageous conversations and less small talk.
What do you want your legacy to be?
Man, I'd be happy if people said I was inspired to act in the face of fear because of the way Nick lives or talks about stuff.
Yeah. What's one book you think every dreamer should read?
Have you heard of the 4 Agreements?
No.
I just think it's really kind of a little bit of like a spiritual bend in the book, but it basically says, be impeccable with your word. Don't take things personally. Don't make assumptions and always do your best. And I just think it's a great way to live. And in business, man, you cannot take things personally and you can't make assumptions. And you do need to be impeccable and you always need to do your best. So I'm like, I don't know if there's a better way to look at that.
How do you define success?
Oh, that's a tough one. But I think it's ultimately living a life that allows you to feel fulfillment and meaning.
What is one trend you are currently excited about?
I would say probably the mesh satellite networks that I know like Elon Musk is trying to put up. I just think it's going to globalize the world in a way that we've never seen before. Everyone's going to get access to the internet.
The satellite network net, right?
What is it? Starlink or something like that?
Starlink, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's going to be really cool to see all these people that have never had internet before suddenly coming online.
Yeah. I'm interested to see if they can actually provide a better service than what's currently out there. Because I think, please. Yeah, I'm like, please redefine that. What's one habit you find helpful in your life?
Probably an annual review. I do an annual personal review of my life where this is all part of the pilot mindset. Actually, I know I've defined my values. I rank myself in each of my values and then figure out where the gap is for this year that I want to work on.
You know, what I find interesting about that is so often we do a business assessment of ourselves, but like you talk about, it sounds like that's much more inclusive beyond just business. It's also personal life, personal goals, and the business stuff. And I think that's really powerful.
Absolutely. Life's more than business. So I think that's important.
What's one thing you wish you would have known when you first started out?
Oh man, go bigger sooner.
Yeah.
It's not going to kill you if you fail.
Now with the business, you often have to take risks. You have to measure those risks, I assume too. I'm sure you look at a big purchase of a jet and maybe it's a mid-sized jet. And I'm sure there are times like you're going, is this really the right time? Are we making the right purchase? Is this the right? How do you process those decisions where there's a lot on the line, but there's also a big win potentially there?
I mean, COVID was that for us. It's really about understanding that in the worst case scenario, are we going to survive? It's a pretty simple calculation for us, which is let's model it as if it tanks in the worst possible way.
Okay.
And does it destroy us? And if the answer is no, then it's an absolute right thing to do. And it's all expected value, right? If there's a 10% chance of failure or a 10% chance of losing $1 million, but a 90% chance of making $10 million, then it's just a pure expected value equation. It's a minus 100,000, or it's, what did I say, 90%? Then it's $9 million. It's 9 million up and 100,000 down. I would take the 9 million up any day. So it's really like going back to rationality.
Yeah.
And this is why I say don't make assumptions.
Yeah.
Really be super rational and statistical and honest about what's going on. But I will say to this, I've often underestimated the risk of inaction. That's why I say go bigger sooner, because people think it's safe to not make the move. Sometimes that's the riskiest thing you can do.
Yeah. It actually sets you back way further than the risk would have.
Yeah. I've seen other people pull ahead in the industry because they were willing to take chances.
Wow. If you weren't doing what you're doing today, what do you think you'd be doing?
I'd probably be a coach or a therapist.
Nice. That's, it seems like it's a far departure. Is that what you were going to school for, or?
No, I just think the people that I found to be most meaningful in my life are the ones that help me get my mindset right.
Okay.
And when I think of like, how did I go from being a musician, computer engineer to a guy running a business? It's all my coaches, therapists, and people that have guided me to help me see the full potential in myself and actualize it. So I don't know if there's a better gift you can give someone than access to their fullest self.
Yeah. Our final rapid fire question today is, what is one dream you're still wanting to fulfill in your own life?
Back to my first dream. I want to perform in an arena setting. I want to share my music and I want to see people sing it. So it'd mean I'd have to be known on some level, but I can't imagine the feeling of like when you see like the shot, I saw this of Eddie Vedder, a shot behind him looking out over the audience. And I'm like, that must be so insane to have hundreds of thousands of people sing your song back at you.
Yeah. What's funny is right before this interview, I was sitting down with Lecrae, who's a multi-Grammy award-winning singer. He's performed in arenas and stuff. And it's just interesting to hear the perspective of people like him and you who are operating at the peak of performance in what you do. Because I think often we look to people like you or him and we go, well, I could never own a jet. And yet throughout the conversation, hearing how it's just a mindset shift of how we process it as an asset, how we use it to our benefit, how we leverage it beyond just ourselves, and how the investment is actually much smaller if we understand how to appropriately do it. It's completely a game changer. And so you talk to people like you talk to people like him that perform at this high level, and you learn that what sets a person who owns a jet from a person who doesn't is how they process how to get there. And it's just amazing to hear how a lot of the things that we think are impossible are much more possible than we could ever imagine.
That's right.
You know, for you as a business guy, beyond the dreams of like, you know, you look at performing and stuff in the flight world and in the business world of what you're doing, what's that dream?
I think I'd like to be part of the creation of an airplane that never existed before. Like I've heard of people that were involved on a design side, like to take an idea, have it go through the whole research and development process, and then see that the world is always different for the fact that this plane now exists that could do something that maybe other planes couldn't do. Yeah. So I'd love to get involved in that in some way, shape, or form. That really feels like, you know, engineers have a beautiful legacy. Either their work is judged negatively for all of time because, again, like bridges fall down and things like that. But when it goes well and you look at beautiful engineering, I mean, I think of, again, like the Apple products and the fact that it's like, what a beautiful marvel of engineering. Yeah. And for all of time, that just shifted the way people interact with something. So I'd really like to create something more than just the way we use things. It would actually be the thing that we're using. I'd like to be put my thumbprint on something that people use.
You mentioned that, and I'm curious about something, taking that one step further, the development of a plane. There's companies like Boom, Ariane. There are several companies that are aspiring to supersonic jet status again for the consumer side. Yeah. Is that something that you'd ever want to be involved with, something like that?
When the time is right. I mean, we really don't believe that we should be pioneers in that way. I think people that launch new models of airplanes take a lot of risk. Yeah. You just never know. And you don't know. I mean, all it takes is one high profile issue with one of those airplanes, and suddenly the whole world's afraid of supersonic jets. Yeah. So I generally say I like proven models, and I think my customers like that we use proven things. Yeah. I don't want my customers to be test pilots or test passengers or anything. So I've always believed in business. I don't need to be the guy who's on the cover of a magazine. I just want to be the guy who has a great business that takes care of the people, and we have a good culture, and I'm proud of that. Yeah. But yeah, I'd help design it. I'd definitely help design it, but I'll wait a couple of years to buy one.
Well, that was the side I was more talking about, the design, not so much the, hey, sign up to be our guinea pig and hope it works out well for you.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a blast. I think it would be really interesting to marry the engineering challenges of creating this piece of metal that flies through the air at thousands of miles an hour with the practical application of it from a user perspective. I love that. I love anytime, I think it was Elon Musk's ex-wife that said, someone put on Quora or Reddit, like, how do you become a billionaire? And she said, be a master of one domain and then master a completely unrelated domain and figure out how to bring those two things together in a way no one's ever done before. Yeah. I like that. I like taking user experience and marrying it with an engineering challenge or something to that effect. So I think that would be really rewarding. Hopefully they'll hear it and they'll invite me in, you know?
Yeah. Let's drop a note to Boom or one of the other supersonics and get you on their board.
Exactly. That would be the dream.
Yeah. As we wrap up, we always like to leave our guests have the final thought. What would you like to leave us with today?
You know, I just think the world would be a really beautiful place if people move through their fear. So my big push right now, at some point, I'd like to launch a podcast that lets people understand that entrepreneurs are afraid. We're all afraid. There's a misnomer that we're not afraid. We're all terrified. And we do it anyway. So my wish to everyone is whatever you're scared of, do it anyway.
I love it. Nick, thank you so much for taking time out, joining us here on Jumble Think, and sharing some insights into a world that I think is really fascinating. I know our listeners will too, and how it's not as distant as we perceive it to be.
My pleasure. It was great to be here.
Once again, I want to thank Nick for joining us on the show today. Make sure to go check out what he's doing. The links are in the episode notes. I also want to thank you for tuning into today's show. It means the world to me that you would listen, and I hope that seeing something that seems so impossible in the conversation today with Nick of private jet flight as a possibility would spark other dreams that you have, other things that you think are impossible, that this would show you that there are roadmaps for turning those dreams and ideas into reality, that the things inside of you that you think, well, maybe I'm not good enough, or maybe that's just unattainable, maybe they aren't. And that's my hope today, that you would be challenged to see the impossible and see it as possible and turn it into reality. But to do it, you have to take a risk. You have to step out. So now it's your turn to get out there, to dream big, and to change the world around you.
Dans une tenue légère. ce qui peut vous gêner ou tirer votre attention. Cherchez la meilleure position. Les bras et les jambes légèrement espacés. Étirez-vous doucement, mais complètement. En avant, en arrière, sur les côtés. Vous êtes une autre personne. Les mères de famille, les enfants, peuvent également prendre un moment revitalisant. Dans quelques mois, lorsque vous aurez bien saisi la technique et que vous serez maître de votre corps, vous pourrez vous décontracter même en travaillant.